Today is my birthday, and what I wanted to do for today's video was to review a mod that was birthday themed. So what I did is I went on the Steam Workshop page and I typed in birthdays and nothing really came up. So I went back to the drawing board and I thought, Joe, what do you like about your birthdays? What makes you smile? What makes you happy? And what makes the day even better? So I found this mod and I thought this was perfect. Introducing the Abuse Held Entities mod. Because, you know, nothing screams birthday more than abusing some entities in Rimworld. Nice. Let's get into things and start with the content. So let's start by looking at the content of the Steam Workshop page. What is there and what do we see? So we start off with the thumbnail, and this is the first time that I've ever found a mod where the thumbnail has just made me laugh. Like, it just makes me chuckle. I don't know what it is, it's just brilliant and works extremely well. The rest of the Steam Workshop page unfortunately leaves a lot to be desired. There's only text here. What I'd really appreciate here is some images of what you can actually do with the entities, and I think obviously some HIFs as well to actually show you doing it. A little bit more of the Steam Workshop page and it would be amazing. So how does this abuse look like in game? So what I wanted to do first was find out exactly how we did it. So what I've done is I've set up a nice little containment area here, and we're going to go through the options to see how we do it. So what I thought initially was that if we access these entities as if we were going to study them, maintain them, learn more about them, maybe it was in the options there. It's not. What we have to do instead is grab our colonist and manually select one of the entities to then abuse them. The options that we've got on offer here is just basic abuse, basic abuse. Then we have the bullying it until it goes down or dies, and then we have the hurt something's legs until they break or they go down and die. We have several options here to give us the varying amount of damage that we want to do to them. Now on the surface of this is just a bit of a meme, but I think this could actually go deeper, which as we'll explore later in this video. So what does this abuse actually look like? So what I've got here is a flesh bulb and a tri-spike, and because these are kind of like the Russian dolls of the Anomaly DLC, as in if we hit them and kill them, more of them pump out, what I wanted to show is what happened when we abuse these. As soon as we abuse either the flesh bulb or the tri-spike, more things pop out. Maybe a balancing thing, maybe something is going wrong here. It was nice to see that I could abuse them, but I ended up getting more abused than them. So let's grab ourselves an entity that is perfect for abuse. The Gore Hulk. Kind of really doesn't do much, kind of looks like Homer Simpson. Not saying that he necessarily deserves the abuse, but there we go. So if we just abuse the Gore Hulk, it is one hit. Just one little punch, a little bit of stress relief. Nice. If we then bully it, it is several punches all over the body and doing a very healthy amount of damage, enough to kind of get it to be bleeding out in maybe 17 to 20 hours, depending on what you're abusing. Then the last option is to hurt the legs until they break or go down or die. All of the damage that it was done in the bullying section is then focused on the legs. The only thing that I'm not too keen on here is, why can't the legs break? I want to see the legs break, I want to see the legs get cut off, I want to see actual limbs be removed with this option. Otherwise, very simple and does the job. So why are we beating these entities? Not only is it because they're annoying, but we actually gain mood buffs from these. If we have a colonist and we beat and abuse one entity for just one time, we receive a 5 in a mood buff, a nice little amount. Now if you have a colonist that is a wimp and they then abuse an anomaly, they will receive a -2, and then if we have a colonist with the bloodlust trait, they will receive a pretty big +8 in mood every time they abuse these. I think it's very important to note here as well that if you do abuse them, or if you do break their legs, or you do bully them, there is no difference in the amount of mood your colonist will gain, which honestly is a little bit of a letdown if you ask me. So that's going to be it for the content section here, and as we can tell, this mod as a whole is a bit of a meme. It doesn't really take itself seriously, and on your birthday, that's exactly what you want. However, what I'm really interested in by this mod is the mechanics that are added here are somewhat believable enough that it could be a very serious mod if it wanted to be. I can see this mod being developed further and being added more and more depth into this, and you can have different layers of the mood buffs and debuffs depending on what your colonists are doing. There's a lot of scope here for something that could be taken as a joke, but then made something quite serious as a mod. What I think I'd love to see in the future of this is maybe add a IG Legion meme that means that you could get even more mood from abusing these entities, or maybe even have some individual traits for your colonists to get randomly that give you more benefits or consequences from abusing these entities. There's a lot of scope here for improvement for this mod into the continued development if the mod creator wanted to. But in terms of content, there isn't much here. and I'd like to see just a little bit more in-depthness of it all, but it's still an extremely fun mod and something you can just chuck in and you can get a nice little bit of a mood buff here, which is always nice. For content, I really like what's going on here. There's just not that much here, and I think we could do with a little bit more here. So I'm going to be giving it a 7 out of 10. Okay, so next let's move on and look at the quality of this mod. Traditionally in this section, I look at the items that have been added, zoom in, tell you about the texture quality of them, tell you how much love's been put into this. But on this occasion, I don't know what to do. I mean, you zoom in on the entities as they're getting abused, and I mean, you smile as it happens. That's about it, really. I've also noticed that when you are using a colonist that has got either the wimp trait or the bloodlust trait, there is a different description for the mood buff and debuff you get when you hit the entities, which is a nice little bit of quality. It's also nice that all of the entities that are in the Anomaly DLC can be abused, and I'm going to be assuming that any modded entities can also be abused, which is always nice, especially if they're annoying. And that's it for the quality section. There's not much I can look at here, unfortunately. What's here is nice. I think there's been some care and attention put into this. I'd like some more. Maybe I wouldn't. Who knows? I'm going to be giving it a 5 out of 10 here. Very middle of the board, very mid-range. I don't know what else other score to give it, honestly. Next, let's move on and look at the balancing of what this mod does. So for this section, what I wanted to do was show you and visualize to you what happens if we abuse a colonist and look at the mood debuffs and buffs and compare them to the base game vanilla stuff. So very interestingly, let's start with the -2 mood debuff if your colonist is a wimp. This is the equivalent of almost having your headache go away. Okay, makes sense. The equivalent of having a slightly impressive barrack, which your colonists don't necessarily want. It's also the equivalent of having a chemical want, the start of having a chemical need, and it's only a -2. The most interesting one is that if your colonist is a wimp and they abuse an entity, this is the equivalent of a mood debuff of wearing human leather. Rimworld. Not too bad though, it kind of makes sense, and I do kind of agree with this mood debuff. Next, let's check out the normal mood buff, a +5. This is the one that most of your colonists are going to get, and all round, +5 doesn't seem that bad. So let's compare this to the base game vanilla Rimworld stuff. So beating an entity and getting a +5 in mood is the equivalent of being high on go juice. Makes sense. It's the equivalent of also eating a fine meal, the equivalent of having a very impressive dining room, and beating an entity into submission, making them bleed and nearly die is the equivalent of receiving kind words. Honestly, yeah, I could potentially see this being a little bit powerful. Maybe have this reduced down to 4 or 3 even, especially going from -2 to 5. That's a 7 mood difference here. Maybe a little bit lower. So next, let's look at what happens if your colonist has the bloodlust trait and they beat an entity. So this is the equivalent of being inebriated in the warm state. So you're nicely drunk is the equivalent of beating an entity. Also attending a party. Depends on how many other people are also beating the entity, I guess. And the wondrously impressive bedroom. You might be beating your entity in the worst cesspit known to man, but it's like having an incredibly impressive bedroom. And the most interesting one, that if your colonist has the bloodlust trait and they are beating an entity, abusing it, breaking its legs, it's the equivalent of getting some lovin'. I think that is totally down to what your colonist and what story and background they've got. I think the +8 actually makes sense, and I'm quite happy with this amount. For this bloodlust sort of trait, I get it. What I'd like to see, however, is the psychopath trait added, and any other trait that nullifies the social thing. I think this makes sense. I just want it to be a little bit more widespread and more available to different traits. So that's going to be it for the balancing section, and generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with how everything performs. The only issue I've potentially got is that a +5 from beating an entity is quite a lot. I think what this mod would really benefit from was having different amounts of mood depending on how serious of the abuse you're doing. If I'm just abusing an entity straight up, maybe have it only be a +1 or +2 or +4 if you have the bloodlust trait. And if you're going to be breaking its legs and literally abusing it beyond belief, give it a +12. Like, let's have a little bit of a layering and a little bit of a hierarchy about what the amount of abuse you're doing, and maybe add some more stipulations as to whether or not you can do the abuse. But I think as a basic mod goes, a one that adds not very much but gives a lot of benefits to you as a player, the balancing is fine. It's a fun and it's inclusive of what you're doing, and the micromanaging to allow you to do a little bit of abuse never hurt no one. So for balancing, I'm very happy giving this a 8 out of 10. Next, let's check out the compatibility. Are there any bugs that you need to know about and how this fit with your playthroughs? Now, in terms of bugs, there was one that I did experience. If I had a colonist that was assigned to go study said anomaly, and I then got another colonist to try beat it, the colonist that was then try to beat it could only ever abuse them and not actually do anything else. A very small bug, but a bug is a bug. Looking at the Steam Workshop page, there have been no reports of bugs whatsoever. People only have fantastic things to say about this mod, and there are no other reports of any issues. Then how will this mod fit with your playthroughs? Now, unfortunately, this mod has a hard requirement of the Anomaly DLC. Who'd have thought? So this is going to mean that you're going to be pretty much limited to the Industrial era and the Spacer era, and any era regarding the Anomaly DLC. There is a mod that has become available that will allow you to access the Tribal and the Medieval era, and we'll go through that in the mod recommendations section. I also think that, unfortunately, because of the hard recommendations in the Anomaly DLC, you are going to be forced to spend pretty much all your time in your playthroughs doing the Anomaly DLC. Now, I'm not necessarily one to judge. I think Rimworld is amazing and so are all the DLCs, but the Anomaly DLC is probably the worst one, let's be fair. So as a result of that, the compatibility for me is definitely lacking a little bit. So I'm going to be giving it a 5 out of 10. Next, let's check out my mod recommendations to go with this mod. And as I said in the compatibility section, unfortunately, because this mod is hard requiring the Anomaly DLC, it kind of forces you to do a playthrough specifically about the Anomaly DLC. Not the end of the world if that's what you want to do, but it does unfortunately limit a lot of mods that I can necessarily recommend with this. So let's start with the Tease Seal the Spirits and Tribal Anomaly allows you to access the Anomaly DLC stuff in the earlier eras. Next, the Anomaly Orbital Trader to get the stuff from space easier, and new Anomaly threats, more things for you to abuse, whoever's going to say no to that. And lastly, the Mood Alerts mod. So if you have a colonist that's about to have a mental breakdown, just get them to abuse an entity and they'll be absolutely fine. So in terms of mod recommendations, unfortunately, it's very niche as to what I can recommend go with this mod, just because of the Anomaly DLC stuff. Obviously, if you are running the Anomaly DLC, please use this mod. It's probably going to be a great laugh for you. If not, I mean, you're just not going to even bother touching this. So for my mod recommendation score, I'm going to be giving a 6 out of 10. So my conclusion, where am I at with this? I really like this mod, and for my birthday to enjoy a mod like this, it's honestly perfect. This mod is great fun, and it's just what gaming's about. Not taking it too seriously, doing something you necessarily shouldn't be doing, and just enjoying it. I heavily recommend that you guys do use this mod though if you are running an Anomaly DLC playthrough, because I think this mod's perfect for it, and it just adds that extra little bit of fun to it and a little bit more of an involvement that you won't be able to get with many other mods, and the mood buffs and debuffs that you're getting with it are very nice as well. So for content, I gave it 7 out of 10, quality 5 out of 10, balancing 8 out of 10, compatibility 5 out of 10, my mod recommendation score was 6 out of 10, giving it the grand total score of 31 out of 50, which is a low rated B mod. Like I said in earlier sections though, I think if this mod could be taken even further, given more depth, it could go from being sort of a meme mod to something that's actually quite serious and also quite involved with the player and being funny and everything. It could be an extremely well received mod within the community, especially for the Anomaly DLC. But don't listen to my opinions, please check this mod out for yourself, and I highly recommend you do if you don't like the Anomaly DLC stuff and you want to abuse it, because that's what it deserves. So if you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking, subscribing, and make sure you tell your mum about me. I'll see you next time. Thank you.